Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this month's IQ Academy webinar. Thank you for taking the time out to join us on our bite-sized session this month, where we're taking a look at dealing with change with Adam Daniels of Sibelco. Our Lunch and Learn webinar is aimed at supporting you and develop your knowledge on key issues within the industry, and so your feedback's really important to us. If you do have a chance to complete the short questionnaire just at the end of today's session, it would be very much appreciated, and just helps ensure we make these webinars relevant to your needs. Time permitting today, we will try to answer any questions received, which you can send through on the questions panel just to the right of your screen. If we don't get a chance to cover any of these, we'll ensure these are addressed in the follow-up materials after the event and get those circulated around to you. Our upcoming webinars for the next couple of months include Landscape and Restoration with Simon Higson from SLR Consulting and Inspiring Futures in Mineral Extractives with Anthony Elby from MP Futures. You can register and find out more information on these on the events page on the IQ website. The address is just up there on the bottom of the screen now. And our branches are also going to be running a selection of events over the coming month. Details are available on the current slide. For further information, if you contact your local branch secretaries, and all the contact details are available on the branches page of the IQ website at quarrying.org. And I'll now hand you over to Adam.
Afternoon, everybody. Well, that was the professional bit of the webinar, and now you're going to get something hopefully a little bit different. So I better introduce myself first and foremost. I'm Adam Daniels. I'm the operations director for Sibelco UK. Sibelco is part of a global organisation, 244 operations, roughly 10,000 people, €3.5 billion turnover. And we're the biggest company that most people have never heard of, and have probably one of the biggest impacts on people's lives, much like the quarrying industry. I can guarantee that when you woke up this morning and you went to the bathroom, that your toothpaste will have had silicate in it from one of our quarries. You'd have looked out the window and that would have come from silica from one of our quarries, and your basin and your bath and your toilet, that will have come from our ball clay. And if you wrote on a piece of paper this morning, our kaolin would have gone into that as well. So we cover a huge, broad breadth of minerals, and so different businesses, different end uses, and we have to deal with a huge amount of change. As an industry, do we think we're good at change? I hope out there, whoever's listening, everyone comes back with, yeah, we're really good at change. I think we're phenomenal at it. I think we're one of the few industries that actually make a difference to the world. That image I brought up there, that's one of our kaolin operations down in the southwest. There's not many jobs that you can have, or industries that you can work in, that when you talk to people at the weekend or in the evening, they say, well, what do? You can say, well, we actually change the physical makeup of the world. You take that image there, 100 years ago, that would have just been moorland. The hill in the background is created solely by the extractive industry. And then what we take out, the products that we produce, we change them into something different that, as I've touched on, people need in their everyday lives. And so sometimes we miss where the change is, or the reason why we're doing the change, and the benefit that it comes from. And I always like to throw this one in. The change that we make as an industry, anyone that wants a beer bottle, that's got to come from quarrying. These are the things that we sometimes forget. So, change management. What is probably everyone expecting for the next 15-20 minutes? Me to go through models of how to manage change. I'm not going to do that, because these are a very, very simple way of looking and learning about change management models. And that's to go on the internet and look them up. And after doing a degree in change management and spending quite a lot of time with working life changing organisations, I've come to the conclusion that all of the models are right. We like to think that the academics have maybe got it wrong, and they've never lived in the real world, and they've never had to deal with real problems. But the models are right. Where the models often go wrong is the situation. and the way that we use them, and the way that we interpret them. And that comes back to what I want to talk about today, which is sort of setting the vision, knowing why we want to do change. When we talk about change, the habit I think people often get into is looking at where we've been. We ask the wrong questions, we look in the wrong direction. We talk about change as going from one thing to another, and we spend a huge amount of our time looking back at what the other was. Well, before I did this webinar, I had a quick look on the internet, and I had a quick look around for some quotes on change. And one that kept coming up, and it really worried me, and it's one that I've heard in the industry, I've heard it on sites, and I've heard it at every level in the organisations, is, well, we're going to do change because it's time for a change, and we're due a change. And that should never ever be the reason for change. Change is always about making things better and going in a new direction. But that should be, sorry, we've got to skip too far ahead there. That should be because we've got a vision, we know where we want to go. And if we don't tell people the reason for the change, no one can ever get on board. That's often the reason why we see a degree of resistance. You know, I'm hoping there's a lot of people who are productive labour. I'm often described, particularly by my own father, as non-productive labour. I don't actually do anything during the day. I don't convert my breakfast into physical movement and physical changes in the world. I don't turn an open field into a hole. I just have the conversations that hopefully make it possible. But at that level of the organisation, we often don't communicate well and don't show the reason for the change. It's just seen as job creation and hassle, if we're going to use very simple words. And that is never the case. I can guarantee that in all organisations, the reason that people want to change is to make it better and to grow. That should always be the ultimate aim of the quarrying industry and any industry. And so that comes down to then trust. We often talk about trust in our equipment and our trust in our management structures and trust in our procedures. But we've got to instill trust within the organisation and within the people in the organisation that the change is for the right reason, and that they've got the opportunity to influence that change and have the constructive conversations and be given the information. We wouldn't, on a plant, change the process settings without first of all communicating to everyone the reason for changing them in the form of the spec sheet. This is the product that we want to produce. We need to change the way we produce it by doing these processes in order to make the product. We've given the end goal. Sometimes at the higher levels in the organisation, that can be missed or miscommunicated. And that comes to the first sort of, I've got 4 segments to how I like to manage change and develop organisations, and that's the vision, how we want to change, how we want our changed world to look. So again, we're looking forward. It's not how we were and what we're going to change about how we were. It's where we are going to end up. What's the end goal? Again, it helps to steer the conversation in the right direction. If we only ever look back at what we're going to have changed, it puts in the perception that what we were doing was wrong. That's often where the trust is lost. It's questioning people's beliefs. It's questioning people's sort of ethos for coming to work. No one comes to work during the day or does anything if they believe it's wrong. They don't go out to deliberately do things wrong. And by looking backwards, we sort of give that impression, whether we mean to or not. Whereas looking forward and setting the vision, the end goal of where we want to be through the change process, it gets everyone pointing in the correct direction. And then we've got to get to the point where we communicate the strategy. How will we get there? How will we manage the change? How will we play the game? How will we organise ourselves in order to get to the vision? In change, it can very quickly disperse, and we say, well, actually, this is the end goal. We've not got a plan to get there. We just hope we'll get there in a few months. And a lot of the models that you can go and look on the internet, they will give you the way to build a strategy, to build an organisation, to build a management plan for the change process. But it comes back to that very simple thing, which I'm gonna keep repeating because I'm a relatively simple man in my thinking. We've got to have the vision, and everyone's got to understand the same reason and the end goal that the change is there to achieve. And then once you've got your vision and we've got the strategy of how we're going to do it, the organisation then comes in to support and sustain it. Often we see places and we change the organisation without actually knowing the reason why we're changing it. And we do it on process plants as well. The number of times I've been on plants where we're struggling to make specification or the efficiency is reduced, and we've changed the organisation of that plant. We've not linked up all of the bits. We've not kept our eye on the end vision. So what product do we want to make, or how many tons do we need to produce, or how would we like the restoration to work? We've looked at, we've took the organisation, we've changed a part of it, but without linking it all in, that very end goal. And the views term, the model can't run uphill. The organisation, and what I mean by this is the organisation can't dictate the change or the vision. We can't build a structure and then say, well, we've built our structure, we must live and die by this. Whether it's managing a site, managing a small project, or managing a big multinational business. We need to stick with the vision and make the organisation, make the systems and make the procedures work for that vision and the reason for the change. Again, it's one of the frustrations I see quite regularly is a change has been put in place and it's as if it's set in stone. Now, we're in the wonderful industry where we've got the ability to change a stone from one thing to another. So if we can change a physical rock from one thing to another, there is absolutely nothing stopping us changing a system or procedure to match that long-term vision and that long-term change that we want. And from an organisational point of view, we get buy-in. People are keen, feel that they've got an influence on the change. They understand where we're going with the change, and they can make it work for the business. And so it's trying to change that thought process from telling to encouraging and working with people at every level. And this is a point that I'm really, really passionate about when it comes to change. And it was one of the reasons for me to offer up speaking today. If you want, as I touched on before, if you wanted to know the ins and outs of a change management model, there's academics that can teach that far, far better. And the internet is just an endless source of resource. But we miss out of the change management process or the conversations about change. The true reason for doing it is it gives us the chance for growth. And it gives us a chance for growth in two aspects. It gives us a chance to grow the business. If we'd not changed how we were doing, how we were operating quarries, we'd still be using drag lines and we'd still be using people in stovepiper hats and donkey jackets and hand shovels. We wouldn't have grown as businesses. But we get the chance to grow as individuals. That's the most exciting thing, I believe, that you can communicate to an organisation, to a team, to a workforce when we're going through change. And I've put a comment there on that slide, which a lot of people sort of regale in horror at when they see it. I'll be very honest, this is what I live my life by, and I've tried to instill within Sibelco UK. and that is work on making yourself redundant each day, and you'll always have something new to do. The worst thing we can ever do, and what will always slow down change, is if we hold on to jobs and we don't let go of the past. We keep, again, back to the vision, we keep looking backwards and not forwards. And people, we could say quite rightly, are often wary and frightened of change. As an industry, we've gone from a big job base to a much smaller one. But that's because we always think that efficiency means less and people doing less and having less people. Well, actually, it's the complete opposite. It was a Henry Ford quote that every pair of hands comes with a mind, and that's what we can instill through the change processes. We can take those skills and we can take people's abilities and allow the businesses and them to grow, and we do something new. I think if we could all work on that basis, we'd be amazed what we can achieve and what teams can achieve. I used a brilliant example of automation in one of our plants, where the drive for automation wasn't that we wanted to reduce headcounts. It was that we'd identify how skilled the individuals were doing a relatively mundane activity, that we could take those people and we could grow a much more technically complicated and therefore more profitable area of the business, therefore growing us as an organisation, but also growing them individuals in what they do each day, what their knowledge was, and what their opportunities were going forward. And so I've gone through relatively quick there and a quick overview, and as always, you've got to take your opportunities in life to maybe get your message across. And this is one that anyone who's seen a presentation from me will have heard before. But I am keen to advertise to every level of every organisation. What we do is absolutely fantastic. And people are often astounded when they come from outside of the industry in and see it. But I think we've become a little bit blind to it. And we sometimes see ourselves as just digging holes. And I see us as far, far more than digging holes. I met a gentleman last year who went round one of our operations, and he coined the phrase environmental enhancement and industrial fun. A lot of us grew up, looking enviously at a yellow plant and wanting to operate it, and some of us are lucky enough now to do it. And it's one I think we need to keep communicating to the wider world, and do it through friends and family and anyone that you come across, because the industry is difficult to secure reserves and to secure permissions. But if we can educate at every level and every opportunity into the wonderful things that we do and the environments that we create, I think we'll have a much brighter and more productive future. So hopefully that gives you some food for thought. I know there was no models to take away and no facts or figures, but hopefully it's a slightly different view on change. And if you can have that self-reflection and think about change as you've seen it in your organisations or your daily lives, and then take the models and put the theory against the side of it, I think we've got a much better chance of making the world a slightly different place. Okay, Dave.
Thanks, Adam, and thank you to all of you who took the time out to join us today. We've had no questions through, but if there is anything after the webinar that you think of, please drop us a line at mail@quarrying.org and we can come back to you on that. As with the previous webinar sessions, we're making a recording of those and the slides available for you to all access. Keep an eye out for an email from us next week with the respective links on there. And if you do have a chance to provide some feedback of today's session on the questionnaire, that will be coming up shortly. Don't forget while you're here to register for any upcoming webinars that are of interest. All details of those are on the events page on the IQ website. Thanks again and take care.